Good morning, everyone. Limi is not here today. But we have a agenda that covers the 2021 roadmap. Let me bring this up. Okay. Oh. What do you think, Lisa? You put something like for the future agenda? Do you mean we need to work on it before discuss?
Yeah.
Okay, I can. Then we do it next meeting. Next.
Sure, that works for me as well. Up to you.
You mean today also works for you?
Yeah, but like Living will be here in the next meeting, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I can move it to next meeting.
Yeah. Let's talk about the different agenda first, and if we have time, we can do a brief talk about the roadmap.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. I'll put it to the end. All right. Okay. The first one is review and approval for Istio CA configuration API by Shankar. Hey, Shankar.
Hey. So can I just present my screen?
Yes, can present.
Okay. So this is a proposal to basically convert the existing CA configurations into move them into mesh config and essentially have a mechanism to move them into a first-class API. And it's a part of the larger effort to standardize the configuration. Originally, this was, we wanted to do this from Istio 1.9, but I think it's a little late for that. So the goal is to do this from Istio 1.10. So there's a couple of objectives of this document. One is to just document the different STS and CA configurations. And this is actually mentioned in the appendix. So in the appendix, we've just tried to document all the different environment variables and flags that are passed into the proxy as well as Istio-D, and also how they have been configured using Istio Cutler and Helm. And the goal is that some of the more important ones should be gradually moved into an API. There will be a little bit of overlap between this document and the one that Jacob covered in the previous security meeting, which is the certificate management RFC. The certificate management RFC basically talked about how do you configure the certificate request parameters, for example, keys and signing algorithms and things like that. This document will focus more on how to configure the connectivity between the CA client and the CA server. So mostly the proposal is to move this into mesh config. So this is so I've basically made note of the CA server configuration API here. So there's a couple of things that so right now broadly, if we split this up into orthogonal components, the first configuration is how does the CA server authenticate, extract, and federate the identity of the entity requesting the CSR request itself. Now today, Citadel usually relies on the Kubernetes jot to extract the identity, and it's this identity that it puts into the certificate. This is when we're using Citadel. This configuration, this message essentially allows us to tweak this configuration if needed. For example, we have very specific audience requirements when in the JOT when Citadel is signing the CSR. The second is just a generic connectivity config. Now, I don't know if this is actually required. Essentially, this is just a config to for the CA client to connect to the CA server. The goal was that this should be reusable between between the CA as well as the XDS clients. So I don't know if this makes sense. So yeah, if there are some fields to be added and subtracted from this field, please feel free. Then we have what are the different ways of interacting with the CA itself? What are the different APIs? So today, when the CA client, when Istio agent actually interacts with the Citadel server, we use the Istio CA API, which is available in Istio API security. But we also have in open source, there's also the ability to interact with Google Mesh CA. And there is also an experimental plan to interoperate with the Kubernetes CA. So all these are different API types, and this can be expanded. Finally, we come to this. We come to the CA server configuration. So the so as you can see, we're making use of the certificate parameters that was mentioned in last week's meeting. So we have so right now the Citadel server can be used as a self-signing server. So it can sign the certificates, and for that it can generate its own key, or it can basically use the custom CA certs that are plugged in. But it can also be used as an array. In this capacity, it basically authenticates the CSR request that is sent from the Istio proxies, and then it forwards it to the CA server. So this configuration, the message array config, talks about how to interoperate, or how to essentially connect with an external CA server. So we have two modes of operation broadly: the RA config and the CA config. There is also an option to disable the CA server. So a lot of these configuration knobs that are here are they're basically inspired by today's configuration. So there are environment variables to do this. So there is the environment variables to do this. I think there's somebody in the chat requesting permissions. Okay, sorry.
I can fix that.
Yeah. So 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 a lot of the variables here are inspired by today's configurations. If there's any configuration that is present today which you don't see here, those are documented in the appendix. And then finally, the CA server token auth config. So this is the configuration that was mentioned earlier, which talks about essentially configurations for the CA server to authenticate, extract, and federate the identity of whoever is sending the CSR request. Then you have the CA client configuration. Most of these will be in the proxy configs. So the CA client configuration is pretty straightforward. You have the CA address. One thing about the CA address is we do not necessarily need it to be a URI. So right now, it points to the Istio DNS name, but this need not be the case. And then so then this is the CA API, the same thing that was mentioned above. We have the connectivity config. So there's today when the Istio proxy connects to the to Citadel, there's two parts of the security config. One is the MTLS authentication. The second thing is the token authentication. So we wanted to separate this into two separate configurations. So conconfig essentially talks about the MTLS authentication parameters. So and the CA client token auth configuration talks about the token configuration. And it's essentially, the reason is that the MTLS is a transport level security mechanism, while the token auth is a application level security mechanism. So I wanted to keep the configurations for these two things separate. So again, you see this variable called perm cert location, and this is essentially the equivalent of output certs for us. To see the usage of output certs, we can go through the appendix. And then once again, it has the certificate parameters, which is what are the workload certificate configuration parameters. And that's about it. This is just was a very simple proposal just to get started on what the configuration of the CA should be. And the goal is to add this to the mesh config and the proxy config. So there's a couple of questions that I have regarding how configurable we need to make the self-signed certificate. So while we give the user the ability to configure a lot of aspects of the workload certs, I'm not sure. So this particular variable, I don't know how flexible we need to make it for our users. Today we can configure it. There's a lot of environment variables through which we can configure it, but I don't know whether this should be moved into the API. That's it for now. I can open it to any questions if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, I have a question here. Could you scroll up a little bit? There's a Kubernetes CA in your CA type, right? This CA API config Kubernetes CA. Is that talking about the CA API, or you are trying to use the Kubernetes CA as the signer?
That is the API type, actually.
Okay.
The details of the actual, so we have something called the CA address, and I don't know if I should probably change this to a CA identifier. The CA, maybe this CA identifier is a better word for this, because this would dictate the Kubernetes signer name, and the signer name in turn would indicate to Kubernetes whether we want to use the inbuilt signers or we want to use an external signer, for example, Cert Manager that interfaces with the Kubernetes CA.
This is the Istio agent configuration. So why does it care that it's the Kubernetes? Like, it doesn't care how the cert gets signed, right? It just connects to some address.
That is correct. This is mainly.
Let me see. Unfortunately, today their agent, the Istio agent, has different adapters. Today we have two, right? One is to talk to the Citadel, the other one is talk to the mesh CA. I don't know if in the future, I guess in the future we'll make it like even more extensible, so that their Istio agent is able to. Okay.
Right, but you were saying that we were going to put the Kubernetes signer name here, and I don't think that's accurate. Instead, we would connect to the Istio API using the Citadel API, and then that would care about the signer. So that configuration doesn't belong in the agent.
Right, and I think this was largely an effort to, I just wanted to use a common message type. For example, the agent does, there's configurations where the agent doesn't connect to Citadel at all. It connects to the, we have the ability to connect to the Google Mesh CA, which is a different API type altogether. So I wanted to have a common message type to define all the different APIs that can be used. Perhaps if we can have runtime checks to mention that the Kubernetes CA is not supported for the proxy, for the agent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the agent definitely won't directly call to the Kubernetes API, right?
Yes,
it always goes through the Istio D.
Right.
So you don't need to,
The reason that, so this message type is just common between what the RA uses and what the proxy uses or the agent uses. So it is, I can have just a different message type for both of them if that's required.
Yeah, Shankar, one feedback that I've seen when reviewing Kubernetes APIs from the Kubernetes team is that they, like you have a bunch of these common messages where some fields only make sense in some contexts. They recommend as much as possible using specific focused types. So don't have one shared type where half the fields don't make sense. Just make two types. That's just the guidance that they've given, and I think it kind of makes sense and makes things a bit more clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that better instead of
Sounds
like
yeah, sounds good. Then I will have the configs that are specific to the Kubernetes CA will be moved into its own message type, and then that will be moved into the RA config as opposed to the client. That makes sense. If that adds confusion, then yeah, I will move this.
Sure. So you have the CA client configuration, and going
Yes.
up, you have what's that? The other one, the CA server configuration.
Yes.
Right. CA server configuration is supposed to be consumed by
Istio D.
Istio D only,
Yeah.
or if I have, what if I have like Cert Manager running in the system? Is this designed to have Cert Manager consume it as well? No.
As of now, no.
Okay.
Well, for multiple reasons. The first thing is that this is a part of mesh config, which is which is a part of our API.
Sure.
If this was a CRD, then we could assume that Cert Manager could consume it. I guess there is a broader question of how do you configure general CAs, but all the CAs that Istio workloads interact with, but I think that's out of scope of this document.
Okay, that's fine. It's better to make it clear. This is only for Istio D to consume.
Yes. That in the comments.
And if you need to configure their Cert Manager, let's say, they need to the customer need to define. They need to specifically configure that. Okay.
I guess, and I think this has been discussed before. So all this, just to keep things simple, we just wanted to make these changes to mesh config. There's also an option of creating a separate CRD for it, which others could consume. But I think that might be a bit of an overkill.
That's future work, right?
Yeah.
For now, let's just put everything to the mesh config.
So how does it relate with the other work about creating the configuration for the sidecar? Because I don't know if you follow the threads there.
Which particular sidecar config? I'm not sure which thread we're talking about.
The document, there is a document about the EC configuring what certificates are generated on the data.
Right. So this is the one. Are you referring to the one that Jacob mentioned?
Yes.
Yeah. So this reference. So the certificate. So in that document talks about what are the characteristics of the certificates itself, including. So let me just quickly reference that document. So that references things like, the algorithm, the signing keys, and things like that.
I was referring specifically to the discussion about reusing the Cert Manager specification, because Cert Manager defines a certificate and pretty much everything in that document overlaps, and it will be ideal to just use the same keywords and same format as they are using. Okay. So people who use Cert Manager, and we're also discussing about the same thing applying to the things that Istio D itself is managing, like the root certificate, organization is the root certificate, and everything else, because we already have a certificate protos that is specifically for DNS certificates.
Right.
And Cert Manager also happen to have a way to specify root certificates. So the idea is to not define our own proto, but to just adopt the ones that is widely used already.
Right. So if I'm understanding what you're saying that the message that we have should basically have the same fields as what are defined by Cert Manager. And I agree with that. And in this document, the one that I'm presenting today, we don't talk too much about the details of I'm not sure what the cert manager specifies. It might specify things like TTL, key size, and other configurations. The document that I'm presenting today presents configurations that are orthogonal to that. So, for example, whatever certificate configuration we have, that is what will be used here in this field. Does that make sense?
My point is all documents that we have for all APIs should definitely have a section that refers to what are the current standards or de facto standards or other APIs in this field, and Cert Manager is certainly one of them. And if there is a duplication, we should have a very strong reason why we are not using the same field name, same structure as they are doing, because users will have to learn our and deal with two conflicting styles and keywords and everything else. And so I had exactly the same comment last time for the other document. I mean, if we want to configure duration and Cert Manager has a way to configure duration, why not? I mean, what is the reason we cannot use the exactly same thing?
Right.
CA address is probably the only one that is a bit different.
Right.
And for that we have plenty of. I mean, we have precedent. I mean, we have many other addresses that we are using referencing in mesh config. So we need to be consistent with those. But
yes. I guess I will go through the. So I was not aware of. Let me just go through the parameters, the certificate parameters reference, and make sure that there is no overlap.
Yep.
Kostin, are you saying we should refer to the API that Cert Manager takes and define those fields to be similar to that, or the exact message?
To be exactly the same, fields that exist in both should be exactly the same, unless there is a very strong reason that we need to use a different word. Not invented here probably is not a good enough reason. I mean, we can discuss if we can adopt their proto or their CRD as is, and Istio will just watch, like we adopt Kubernetes upstream services in networking, for example. So the new gateway networking will be actually the one defined by Kubernetes networking, and we have this precedent for other APIs. So I'm perfectly happy if we just watch CRDs with the type defined by Cert Manager and we honor them. Or we can, if we decide that there's some reason we cannot do that, then we should have a proto that is mirroring what they have in our namespace. But users should be able to just cut and paste the spec and have the same behavior.
So one question here is with regard to adopting the Cert Manager APIs. I think we had one discussion regarding this a few months back. So Kubernetes, the understanding at that time was that Cert Manager would be able to understand the Kubernetes CSR CRDs essentially. So
there is a slight difference. I mean, there are two dimensions. The Kubernetes CSR API is for signing. I mean, you specify a CSR, you put it in the spec, and you get back a certificate. And they are adopting it as far as I know, but they also have a second style where you put the parameters and they actually create the certificate for yourself.
Right. Okay. So just for clarity, that's the one that we should have.
Absolutely.
That's the one that we want to keep exactly the same. Okay.
The other one we already adopted. So the other one, I think we already have code for that and we support it as far as I know.
Okay. Sounds good. So let me go through the certificate parameters. But again, I'm not sure if Jacob is doing that as well, because like in this document, we're not talking. I mean, we're not covering too much about what the certificate parameters are. But let me just sync up with Jacob if he's planning to adopt the exact same parameters.
Actually, Jacob is going to present following you.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so then I think I'm done. You can start presenting.
Right. Hey, Jacob. All right. I think next one is yours. Jacob, what do you expect to get out of this meeting? Just a reminder for approvers, or
sorry,
you want to?
So there's I guess one thing that I did want mention first is the 1.9 beta is released. I know that there are some issues that Eric reached out to, I think, for this group for Istio.io testing docs. So yeah, so please, if you have some time, download it and test out any changes that the security group is. And then for the certificate management, can we open that doc?
Do you want to present it? I can do it as well.
Yeah, sure. I can present.
Okay.
Okay, so I've made some changes based on feedback from people. Oliver did approve. Costin, I guess we still have. I just want to make sure that that my approach is kind of in line with what you are thinking, so I can work with you a little bit offline as well. But what are the I guess the key concerns that you have still with this this RFC?
Is that a question for Costin?
Yes, it was. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't get this for me. I don't have my comments are on the side. I think it's these are subsets that we identify for workload. I mean, the sooner we get it, the better it is. I mean, Mike seems that we are on the same page on using the same stuff that Cert Manager is using, so users will be able to swap implementation or
Okay, so I'll make sure that the names are the same. For Cert Manager, they actually don't have a proto. They actually implement. It looks like they implement their CRDs by hand. So, but I'll make sure that everything is consistently named across the two. And then once I do, I'll ping you again. Okay.
Yep, and again, we can send them a proto if they. I mean, they use the CRD directly. It's the same thing. I mean, it's not really.
Sure.
The content matters, not the form.
Sure. Yeah. And then the one thing that I also did want to mention is that originally this was going to be planned for 1.9, but just given that, 1.9 is, kind of feature frozen at this time, as well as, making sure that, we have time to incubate and kind of test this feature out. I've moved this to 1.10. Does anybody have any concerns on that? Or do we feel that, that's still appropriate?
I'm okay with it. Yeah.
But try to get it as soon as possible so we can start testing and using it in the master branch.
Okay. All right.
Thank
yeah,
you.
I'll amend my API and my API PR, and then I'll also include that.
One extra comment on this subject. You mentioned in the document that some things that worked in the past were lost in the translation when at some point. I mean, for EC, if there is any bug fix necessary for 1.9 to make sure that everything works, definitely we should do it in 1.9 and prioritize it. Like if ECs don't work with the current environments, I'm not talking about the new proto and everything.
Okay.
But it will be good to do another round of testing. I don't know if we have fully end-to-end testing with EC certificates or other things, but this should take priority, making sure EC works.
Yeah, I did add an integration test for elliptical curve certs using environmental variables. So in 1.10, when as this actually is getting implemented, I'm also going to make sure that there's an integration test that will do an install using mesh config as well as EC, and making sure that behavior is working as expected as well, so that we can provide a path forward for people.
Excellent. Okay, so 1.9 is safe. 1.9 works. I mean, you have everything tested and you're confident. Okay, that's what I was thinking of.
Yes. Yes. 1.9 should be fine. Great. Great. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll update this document today. And then I'll ping you for hopefully one last review. But and then I'll also work with sorry, I forget your. I don't want to kind of on on integrating that with his RFC as well.
Thanks.
All right, cool. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, the next one is Marlo. Marlo is here. Yeah. I don't need to open their doc actually, but I can do that as well. We can see the message on this in this meeting as well. I just copy paste that into their agenda as well. So if you look, the question is, the issue I'm trying to figure out is how to get Kubeflow more easily updated / running on a more secure version of Istio. They are currently on 1.3.1, which is very old. I have a proposal for moving to SMI. Is this a service mesh interface?
It is.
Then and then utilize a Istio adapter instead of what they have now. Since Istio changing API means they don't upgrade. Okay. I'm hoping to find resources within this the security group to help their Istio adapter people get their adapter to utilize their secure elements of Istio. All right, so it seems like try to log in Istio into the SMI. Can you explain it a little bit more?
Yeah. Do you mind if I present?
Sure, no problem.
You're presenting. I cannot. Yeah.
Yeah, let me quit.
There we go.
Excuse me for a second.
Yeah.
Marlo, I know Aaron Small did talk about this today during the product security working group, which is a different working group. I just want to make sure that we're in the right kind of working group for this. Aaron Small is a part of the product security working group, which handles like CVEs and architecture and things of that nature.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Because I may have found the wrong group.
No, I don't think so, unless you're reporting a CVE, which I think it's pretty clear.
I'm not.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, unless you want to count that they're way behind as being a CVE. So currently, Istio is an AI/ML product. For those who aren't familiar, they are still on 1.3.1, which is September 2019, so it's over a year old. They can, at best, upgrade to 1.6 because that's the point before the API changed. And the current version, as you already know, we're at 1.8. Now we're going to 1.9. It's causing major problems in addition to the security issues in that you can't run multiple versions of Istio. And I guess I don't have to present this whole thing. But the main part is that I'm trying to figure out what the paths are to stop riveting to versions of Istio or whatever service mesh that we're on, and still be able to take advantages of the security by having the interface. So I went to the SMI meeting today. Their Istio adapter is also still at 1.3.1. So they need some help over there. Microsoft is interested in helping because they have open service mesh. So if they can get Kubeflow onto open service mesh, of course, they'd be happy. But I personally am mostly interested in getting Istio updated so we stop having security problems, because I get to be partially responsible for some security with some of the stuff we have.
So we are talking about upgrade from skip version upgrade from 1.3 or 1.4.
Not upgrade. I want to change from 1.3 Istio to SMI.
Oh, to SMI.
Or whatever version of Istio they get to. Because if we can go to SMI, which is just an interface, it is not an entire product, and then through the adapter, which is the part that I need to make sure is done correctly, because if it's not done correctly, then you introduce new security issues, right? And then to the service.
What APIs do you need? Like, are you talking about like authorization policy, etc.?
Yeah, so I think SMI is mostly just service mesh, but I'm not sure how much of the security stuff they have in there, considering they're still at 1.3.1.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have someone who actually knew what they were doing, who was over there.
I mean, what do you want to use though? Like, do you just want to do routing, or do you want to use like authorization policies?
we'd like to use authorization policies. So the other person whose name is on this presentation is Frederick Kautz. He's over at doc.ai. He also works with Anthem. They are super interested in having the security policies go through the service mesh.
Okay. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah.
So the two questions, which security policy are you talking about? You're talking about SMI security policies? They have some security policy in SMI? I'm a bit confused, sorry about...
No, I'm talking about the Istio security policy. So we need a way, right. So we need a way to get them through SMI. So right now, SMI is
why do you need to use SMI instead of the Istio APIs directly?
Okay, because every time we rivet to an Istio API directly, they change the API, and then the product doesn't upgrade. So Kubeflow is not the only one that I'm trying to get upgraded.
Right, but won't SMI change their API as well?
They should be backward compatible, and I'm hoping that the adapters, basically the trouble falls to the adapters at that point.
But we should be backwards and compatible as well, right?
So, well, let's clarify a bit. So Istio policy is that alpha APIs are not backward compatible. Beta APIs, we have the same guarantees of backward compatibility as Kubernetes and everyone else. So the API in 1.3 for security was alpha, and I think it was changed in 1.5 or something, but now we are beta API for those APIs. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that Istio itself, networking, is starting to adopt the Kubernetes APIs for gateways and some of the stuff. So if there are Kubernetes APIs, we probably cannot, we may adopt them. I don't think us adopting SMI, is going to happen anytime soon in terms of APIs and making sure the APIs are implemented by Istio or can be translated to Istio.
Yeah, I posted a link to what Costa mentioned. I 100% agree. I think if you don't want to use the Istio APIs because you want a more generic API that has different implementations, that's perfectly reasonable. But I think that the API that is the best suited one for that is the Kubernetes one, because it's driven by Kubernetes and has a lot of weight behind it, including direct Istio support. Like no one here works on SMI at all. I think the SMI adapter is made by some third-party person. I'm not even sure who. It's not really something that is supported. I think it was more just like experimental, which is, since it's still on Istio 1.3, that seems pretty clear to me. So I think going with the Istio APIs is like, it will be more compatible in the future. We moved from alpha, and we know the pain that caused, and we're now beta, which means we are committed to staying stable. And we have the experience of what happens when we don't stay stable, and we probably will never do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was specifically the sidecar resources that make it very hard to update. Yes.
We are just doing it again by adopting the Kubernetes APIs, but that's the right path, because if you provide feedback and because right now Kubernetes APIs do not have the equivalent of policies. So if Kubernetes starts adopting a subset of our APIs or whatever, which will probably start with alpha and go through the whole maturization process, we are generally committed to support Kubernetes APIs in Istio. So safest path will be to use our APIs for now, which are beta and will be supported for as long. Or if you do not like our APIs or whatever, I would suggest looking at the Kubernetes working groups for.
Okay. SMI is a sandbox project, and they are getting some amount of push through Microsoft for open service mesh. So I don't think they're going away.
Yeah, but there's I don't know how much effort that you can get, and in the long term, how much is the cost, because you need to build an adapter anyway between their SMI and Istio, and compared with just directly consume their Istio API, it's like an indirection in the middle.
And for their networking APIs, they also have the problem of conflicting with Kubernetes APIs. So I would expect at least some small backward compatible changes in their side as well, if they want to stay consistent with what Kubernetes is doing.
Okay, I can go look at this and see if I can get some feedback.
Right. Can you just we can follow up on this discussion, of course, And I hope we can have a very holistic analysis of each direction, like how much cost for them, and then we can make the decision, right?
Yeah, well, it's not just upgrading. It's that sometimes you have customers that don't want to upgrade. And then if the product is still riveted, then you end up with an issue where they're not backwards compatible. So if they're running, say, Istio 1.8, and that's what they've committed to for the next 6 months, and the product goes to 1.9, they don't get the advantages that are put there.
We are having discussion, the TOC has a discussion about long-term support releases and this exact same problem. But at least from API perspective, as far as I know, we have the commitment that we are going to support all the beta APIs that whatever we declare beta, it's going to be supported long-term, and the versions will be, kind of completely transparent to each other and compatible with each other.
Is that written down somewhere?
Sorry?
Is that written down somewhere? Because I'm going to have to go back to people and talk to them.
The TOC has, if you look at the TOC agenda, you may find some of this, and there are some documents and proposals linked there. On Friday, if there is a meeting on Friday with the TOC, and that's probably the right forum to discuss this kind of stuff anyway, because it's more above our level, basically.
Okay. Can I get that info later? Of who to talk to?
Of course, I'll send you the meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah. By the way, we have the feature status page. Let me find that out to you. Basically, you can look up what other status of the APIs, right? If the feature is like in beta, this is for security. Like what you are caring about is their like API stabilization. If you click into that, their authorization policy API is beta. So that means, yeah, you can even go back several versions to see when it started to be beta. That means we are fully compatible, backward compatible, starting from the first beta release. Yeah. And in terms of the long-term support, I think that's a good concern. But further, yeah, my question is, if you use MCI with Istio adapter and you use some Istio binary, if suppose we don't have long-term support, your Istio binary anyway, if you're using like too old version, let's say 1.6, your binary is out of date anyway, right? The API is still like stable.
Yeah, one thing
to update the binary.
One thing I'm pushing for is for the SMI community to start versioning their adapters to make it easy to do it that way. So yeah. I understand binary can change, but they should be versioning the adapters, which they're not today.
Yeah, it's totally fine that SMI integrates with Istio, I think. But from Istio side, I don't think we have very high priority to like provide too much support for SMI. It's like mostly driven by the community, I think, if there is an effort. Yeah. But it's up to you to decide like the trade-off between SMI plus Istio versus just directly using Istio.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And also, please follow the Kubernetes services SIG. And there are a lot of discussions there about how to mix the new Kubernetes API with Istio specific API, and how to basically extend or reference or mesh basically between a Kubernetes API and vendor specific APIs.
Thanks. Yeah, that's useful.
Do you get everything you need, Marlo? Not sure.
I don't know. I'll find out. Thank you.
Probably
Yeah,
more
just,
than you need.
Well, if you do have any other follow-ups, feel free to ask on the Istio Slack or something.
Will do. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. We have 12 minutes left. Can we just, I don't know. Should we go through the roadmap for 2021, or we just call this meeting today and discuss it next time?
In environments, we just went over our roadmap, and we mentioned that multiple routes and support for certification is a big priority for us, and we hope that security will match it.
We do support that. Yes, we do have that in our plan. Okay. We can briefly go through it. So here, from row 34, I updated a little bit. This was copied from 2020 roadmap, and we are doing it for 2021 now. Stabilization of the SDS API is what we are working on for now. It's a P0. Sorry, I didn't update it. It's currently GA, but we need to improve. The work will be just improving this API, right? Mesh federation. This was like old one, copied from 2020. There's no like this one. This isn't existing today. I put experimental here because we don't have anything lower than experimental. But we don't have it today. But this basically means multiple routes, right? Multiple routes is similar. It's a similar goal. Let me just put like this. Our goal is to do it in 110, support it in 110, without trust domain verification, right? Like the full feature should be this route. This set of route is associated with like trust domain A, and the other set of routes is associated with trust domain B. We don't have that for alpha. So
I think we could. We have some of conversation in an Envoy issue that to support the SPV trust domain, to have the extension to allow this to happen. That's in line with Envoy 1.18. So in 1.10 we could do that if we could implement that in control plane. For data plane, I'm clear on that. We could tap that by next Envoy release.
Yeah, that would be great. I didn't know Envoy is working on this. If so, I think 110 we could do that. But yeah, let's see. I'll follow up with you. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Smooth CA and trust domain migration. It's again, this is something that we don't have today. Multiple routes is one fundamental thing to support smooth CA migration. We are shooting for 110 for alpha, and we put 112 as beta. Maybe we can move beta a little bit earlier, but I just want to be safe, a little bit safe. Integrate with external CAs, right? Shankar has been doing this. This is really experimental right now. We didn't have enough time to make it beta for 1.9. I hope we can make it, alpha in 1.9. Hopefully we can make it alpha in 1.10 and beta in 1.11 and GA by by the end of this year. Even though 12, sorry. This is a P1 for us. Other things should be P0s. Yeah, those ones are actually Limi know more about it, but unfortunately Limi is not here today. Is Jeffy here? Or Yami? No.
No.
I guess we can stop here because I don't know much context for the following items. Okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, Oliver, we can follow up later on the SPV
That's
Trust
great.
bundle and external CL. I also want to follow up with you, so I'll ping you on chat later.
Sure. Awesome.
Okay. Sounds
Thank
good.
you. Right.
Bye.
Thanks, folks. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.